Hi again. Thanks for responding. Um, I'll begin by addressing your question again. Your question, which seems to have changed. It initially was what fact or piece of evidence would be required, etc., etc. In your last video, it seems to have been revised to what piece of evidence I would need to observe in order to change my views, which is a different question. Surely you would admit. Now, another thing, you seem to be setting all these rules up for the question that weren't initially there. It initially started as quite an open-ended question, but at this point, at the very end of your video, you had mentioned that you cannot provide me with a fair and independent investigation, which is certainly true. However, I was not aware that I needed to give you a hypothetical fact, piece of evidence that you yourself could provide me with. If that's the case, then my answer to your question would be you probably cannot, personally. And that's no knock on you, it's just a simple fact. Neither of us are well equipped with enough information or knowledge to do such a thing. I'm assuming that we're both simply citizens who are trying our best to understand the events of 9/11. Which doesn't rank us particularly high in the pecking order of at least credential-based authority on the subject. Now, as far as NIST goes and Kevin Ryan, well, the interesting thing is that I mentioned Kevin Ryan in passing. Certainly, it seems that you sometimes are misconstruing certain facts that I'm bringing to the table as my attempt to comprehensively state my case, which is certainly not true. I mentioned Kevin Ryan to shed some light on the situation that we're dealing with, to illustrate that there are in fact whistleblowers, and by the way, he certainly does qualify as a whistleblower, and I'd like to explain why briefly. Of course, your statement that NIST was relatively open is true in terms of the communication within NIST. So the whistleblowing didn't take place within NIST. It would obviously have taken place within the media and the people, obviously. That's the whole essence of whistleblowing. It's not to alert the people who already know. It's to alert the media and then alert the public, of course. And another obvious reason that Kevin Ryan certainly qualifies as a whistleblower is the harassment that has followed, and that's easy. If you just research it a bit, you'll see that's completely what is the case. The man has been harassed, he's blacklisted, etc., etc. And although, of course, you could just dismissively make the claim that his views shed negative light on his capacity to be hired, and while that could be a valid argument if you had some cited examples of his deficiency as a professional, there are none that I'm aware of. So that's about Kevin Ryan, but more specifically, the issue is not Kevin Ryan, the issue is NIST, and fundamentally their findings, which, as they admit themselves in their own words, they admit in their own words that their findings only amount to, at best, quote, collapse initiation, which any scientist will tell you is leagues away from claiming definitively that a building would have collapsed globally or totally. So, that, I suppose, is more to the heart of the matter of why NIST is not what I would describe as a honest and unbiased investigation that revealed that the government's claims are correct. Coming to the conclusion that collapse could have initiated is far from in scientific terms, is far from wholeheartedly defending the Bush administration's story. Now, popular mechanics, as far as the story with the familial relations go, again, I don't think it's something that anyone has proven conclusively. I don't think anyone's taken the time to research that in depth. Honestly, it's kind of a side issue. Again, I was trying to skim over some of these elements, not provide a comprehensive explanation for some of these things, which would obviously be ridiculous to try to do in a 10-minute YouTube video. However, If you Google the two men's names, you will easily find articles and quotations actually from Zelikow acknowledging that he does indeed have a cousin with the last name Chertoff who does indeed work for Popular Mechanics. Two very interesting facts. Certainly doesn't dissuade us from lending credence to that possibility. I know there's going to be a lot I will fail to get. Maybe I'll make a follow-up video if necessary. But, you know, as far as your question, it seems that you changed it a bit on me. But if your new question is specifically what specific evidence would be required, well, firstly, you accused me of giving you too abstract of an answer, even though your question, in my opinion, was rather open-ended and inviting of vagaries, which is really the only proper response, seeing as how it was so open to interpretation. Now, another criticism of your question would, of course, be that it's far too simple-minded to try to come up with one fact that would prove one way or the other. Reality is often much more multifaceted than proving things simply. You know, so in terms of there being one simple, overwhelming piece of evidence, I think that's a bit high hopes. I think any court case, a study of any court case indicates that a multitude of evidence is often required, which is why it's important to look at the big picture at all times, which is why I find certain elements of our discussion a bit frustrating and unfortunate, because the big picture, in my opinion, is what we're both ultimately trying to prove, so it should be kept in mind at all times. Which is not to say that anyone should be dismissing any certain points, and I certainly would disagree with that charge in any way. However, you know, I think I've pretty much addressed most of what you mentioned. What else? What else? Yeah. Well, I'll leave it at that for now. Thanks for responding. Be safe. Have a good day. God bless.